my name is Beck and welcome to my March to be read pile. These are the books that I want to start in March. Hopefully I finish them all. I've been averaging about 4 or 5 books a month so far, so my reading has definitely slowed down, but I'm no less ambitious. So the first book on this list is a new release, so is the second, and then after that I'll get into other books that I already own. So the first book is Perfect on Paper by Sophie Gonzalez, and this is a book that reminds me of the Netflix show Sex Education. So the premise for Perfect on Paper is, I think, a girl who is bisexual at high school. I think it's high school, not college. She has this secret blog post where she gives secret sex advice to her colleagues, and I think it's going to be great. I think it has an enemies to lovers story in there as well. And it might be unusual for me to have a contemporary on a list when I'm usually a huge sci-fi and fantasy reader. However, Sophie Gonzalez is the author and she wrote Only Mostly Devastated, and that made it into my top books of 2020 list. I've also got a separate review for it and I adored that book so much. So that is why her new book is on my list as well. I've already pre-ordered it. I'm very excited. I really enjoyed Sex Education on Netflix. I basically destroyed the first 2 seasons. I just lapped those up, and that is a similar premise. So the main character, his mum is a sex therapist, and then he starts accidentally giving people advice at his high school, and it escalates from that point on. I really enjoyed it, and I'm anticipating the 3rd season, so I'm sure that there is a formula there that was successful for the show that is probably going to be successful for the book. And also I love books that are queer spaces and queer positive, so that is just an extra added bonus, to be honest. So I think that comes out at the beginning of March. I think it's the 9th. Then after that one, I got this release date wrong in my previous TBR, and that is A History of What Comes Next by Sylvain Neuvel. And I know that this is a novella at the start of a novella series, and it's also science fiction and drama focused. I know I've enjoyed his works in the past. I've since seen people say they don't love it as much as his previous work. So I loved Sleeping Giants by him, and I really liked The Test by him. So hopefully I end up liking this one as well. And again, I think it's at the beginning of March, so I think it releases early. I have pre-ordered this one as well, except I've pre-ordered it on audiobook because I've heard that it's got multiple voices throughout it, and so it will be beneficial to listen to it in that format. So that's what I did. So fingers crossed that I enjoy that one. And now we are entering the realm of books that I actually own. So on my physical TBR that I already have is Royal Assassin, and I loved the first book. This is a reread for me. I adore Robin Hobb. If you didn't know, I have a review for Assassin's Apprentice, which is the first book in this Farseer trilogy. Obviously this is the second book. It starts out with a boy named Fitz. He's 6 years old at the beginning of the first book. Obviously he ages up throughout the series. He ages in the first book naturally, and we follow him from a very young age because it really sets up the entire world and landscape around him as he's aging. So everything comes into focus as he realizes it. What happens with him is that he is a bastard son of the prince, so because he's a bastard son of royalty, they can't just let him go, because if they let him go, he has a claim to the throne and he is a potential risk. So they keep him close, and hopefully that will stop any threats of him trying to take claim of the throne away from them. So it has a lot of political intrigue. It's very character based. The first book is a very slow burn to start and a very breakneck speed at the end. Robin Hobb tends to build up her stories that way, but the way she paints a picture and the way that the characters resonate with me, I read these more than 10 years ago. I adored them, and I just realized how much they sit in my heart, and I love them so much. So revisiting them has really rejuvenated the love that was already there for Robin Hobb. It just kind of stayed dormant for a while, and now I'm obsessed. So I'm really hoping that I get through the book I'm about to talk about next, because then I would really love to pick up Royal Assassin, but I can't read 2 chunky fantasies physically at the same time. So the next book is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. This is the second book in the Wheel of Time. I'm reading this. I'm currently filming a spoiler vlog as I read through it, but I've just not made time for myself to read as frequently as I used to be able to, because obviously I work an entire week. I film and edit videos. I've got a bunch of other stuff to do. So I just haven't prioritized this, which is a shame because I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoyed the first book. Again, I have a review for it. I'm making or kind of curating playlists of all of the series I'm really enjoying. So I've got Robin Hobb, I've got Brandon Sanderson, I've got Wheel of Time, I've got the Dresden Files. So it is all happening over here. I'm very excited. But this is a book that has a lot of hype around it, a lot of named characters in it. I think at some point I'm going to have to start writing them down, but it hasn't reached that point yet. But I'm really enjoying it. It's a quest with a chosen one, but technically there's more than one chosen one and lines are a bit blurred, and fantasy tropes that you expect to be clear cut are not as clear cut, and it has a little bit more detail about it. And so while it adheres to so many tropes that we're familiar with today in fantasy, I feel like Robert Jordan really kicked a lot of those trends off, and I'm really thoroughly enjoying these. So I wish I could just read faster, because that would mean that I could finish these a lot faster, but at the same time I don't want to miss anything. So I'm trying not to rush through these, even though they're long. I have lowered my Goodreads goal to 50 instead of 100, so I don't feel like I'm behind the 8 ball constantly. So hopefully that means I have given myself mental space to enjoy this, and hopefully I finish it before this video goes up. I'm not sure that I will, but if I don't, then I'll read it in March and I'll just continue reading it. I'm also listening to an audiobook at the moment. I anticipate that I'll probably be finished it by the time March rolls around, because I'm filming this at the end of February, but we'll see. I don't know how fast I'm going to get through an audiobook. So it is The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. This is the 4th book and the last book in her Wayfarers series, and this is a sci-fi, but it's a very character-driven, culturally intense sci-fi in the fact that it doesn't investigate outward plot drama that is very intense. It usually is very character crisp, and we view the conflict from an internal lens. So in The Galaxy and the Ground Within book, we are introduced to an array of different characters. A lot of them are aliens, and so they're not even all people quantifiable as aliens. So that means they're not all bipedal, they don't have the same skin tone that we do, they have different ways of communicating, and Becky Chambers manages to navigate cultural discussion incredibly well, pretty much seamlessly, and it's very sensory orientated, so you get a lot of taste and touch and visuals with her writing, and she's very careful about it. So I adore her work, but again, like The Wheel of Time, I don't want to rush it, because I know that there's detail in there that is going to be very much appreciated, and I don't want to miss it. But at the moment I'm enjoying it. I'm currently listening to the audiobook because I pre-ordered it. I'm adoring it. I love it. So hopefully I can give it a 5 stars. At the moment it's sitting on about a 4, but I've only just started it, so that's not really a rating. I'd better wait for a wrap up before I talk about stuff like that. And I do have a sci-fi, and I hesitate to mention it because I didn't finish it in February, and I don't want to try and hold myself accountable and make myself feel guilty for not finishing stuff in my past TBRs when I've just been busy and had to prioritize other stuff. But I wanted to mention it anyway because I'm excited about it, but I don't know if I'm actually going to get to it considering all the other stuff I've got going on. So it is the 2nd book in the Expanse series. The first one is Leviathan Wakes. I've really enjoyed this so far. If you really like adult fantasy and the world building scope and the characterization in adult fantasy and how it has a lot of breadth, I think you would really enjoy this, even though it's a science fiction series set in space, because people have colonized the universe and it's really interesting. Again, like Becky Chambers, there's a lot of cultural discourse in here, and there's a lot of class discourse, and I really enjoy the banter between the characters. It's very much a found family dynamic between the crew that we start the series with, so I would highly recommend to people to start this series, because I've put it off for a very long time and I regret doing that, which is why I'm excited about the 2nd book. Don't know if I'm going to get to it yet, but we'll see. And then lastly, this is a very indulgent thing of me to do, but I wanted to do more rereads this year. That was one of my goals, so technically Royal Assassin covers off that goal, and I just wanted to throw in a new one, because what if I finish audiobooks that I'm listening to? What will I do next? So I want to listen to Trader's Blade again. I was thinking about reading it physically, but I think I might go the audiobook depending on what else I've got on my plate at the time. This is a book that follows Falkio. It's very Musketeers oriented. It's got that vibe about it, that chaotic adventure about it, and that banter between the characters. So all of these characters, Falkio and his 2 best mates, they used to serve the king, but the king, before this book starts, was killed by all of the dukes in a coup, and now Falkio and his mates have no job, and they need to kind of find their place in the universe, essentially. They don't know what they're going to do in life, they're just trying to make ends meet, and they get into a situation that is not cleanly escaped from, and so following that, they just have to kind of make a living and try and survive. So I love their banter, I love their characterization. When this opened in the first 7 pages or less, I was already laughing. Falkio's voice is the best, and this is one of my favorite series, so I'm really excited to get back into it. So that's why this is on this list. It's pretty ambitious to add it, even though this isn't very long in itself. The other books on this list are fairly long, so we'll see how I go. But there you go, that is my March TBR. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you're going to read in March in the comments, and I'll chat to you down there, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.